part 3 of our series, A Difference Maker, and in part 1, and you can always check out our website at churchnp.com if you want to catch up on any of the past sermons, but in part 1 we talked about what does it mean to be a church that makes a difference, because that's our goal of the church, is to be a church that makes a difference. What does it actually look like? What does that mean? First we had to define what actually makes a difference. What is something that actually makes a difference? And what we said was, and what Jesus said that our job is to go and make disciples of all nations. So how do we go and make disciples of all nations? We live the way God called us to live. And the way God called us to live is to love God and to love others. So in summary, what is a difference maker? A difference maker is someone who makes disciples by loving God and loving others. Every week since, we've been talking about a core value of Impact Church that has gone off of that mission statement of being a church that makes a difference. And today we're going to talk about worship. Worship. So worship is a word that, really when we talk about worship, we think about music, right? That's really what we think about with music. I'm not sure about you, but I love music. How many people love music? Such a stupid question, right? Like, who loves food? Everyone. Like, I know it's a stupid question. That's a trick that pastors use to get you to raise your hand and make you seem like you're engaged to sing. No. But music is weird because music, it can connect with you. No matter what you like, no matter what style, everyone has a style of music they like, or a band they like, or an artist they like, that when they hear a certain song, or they hear this band perform, or whatever, the song's going to connect to you, and you can just start to feel it inside of you. I don't know if you guys feel that way. I like all types of music. I like heavy, screaming music. I used to be in a band that was we were really terrible, and one day maybe I'll show you a video of it. That's where I met Frank. His band was not very bad, mine was really bad. But I like that kind of music. I like some rap is okay. I like some pop music. I'm even, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I'm even starting to like country a little bit. Some of you guys are like, I'm actually starting to get, like, back in the day I was anti-country. Now I'm starting to enjoy some country, but there's a couple bands that I really enjoy, and there's a couple bands that every time I hear a song, they can just connect with me. I don't know if you guys have that where you hear a song and you hear the lyrics, you're like, that's me, and you get the goosebumps. A band that does that for me is a band called Foo Fighters. How many guys know who the Foo Fighters are? Okay, good man. Even if you don't know who the Foo Fighters are, you definitely have heard a song because they've been around for a while. Here's actually a picture. We already got it. So there's a Foo Fighters right there. So the Foo Fighters, I'm a big Foo Fighters fan, and particularly the reason why is because I'm a really big fan of the lead singer. The lead singer's name is Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl, he used to be in Nirvana, and then I started Foo Fighters in the 90s, and I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up listening to the Foo Fighters, and I've always wanted to meet Dave Grohl. Okay? Now, before I tell this story, some of you have heard this story a million times. I'm not apologizing. It's my favorite story to tell ever. So I'm going to tell it many more. If you stay in this church long enough, you'll hear this story again. But anyway, so Dave Grohl, I always wanted to meet Dave Grohl because he's like the biggest rock star, but he also seems like the nicest guy ever. So I really wanted to meet him. And then I was out in California last year on vacation. My wife and I went on vacation. Her sister lives out there, so we went to visit her. And I had a friend of mine who's a roadie, and he was the light technician for Metallica. And Metallica happened to be playing at the Rose Bowl in Los Angeles while I was in Los Angeles. So he said, hey, just see, if you want, you can come, I'll give you a backstage pass. You can go anywhere you want backstage at the Rose Bowl during a Metallica show. And I'm not like I don't really like Metallica all that much, but I will see any band if I can go backstage. I'll go see One Direction if I can go backstage. I'll see Shakira, I'll see Nickelback. I won't see Nickelback, the only band I won't. Every other band I will. So I was like, yeah, of course I'll go. So it was awesome. I was literally under the stage while Metallica was playing. I was like looking over, they were right there, it was awesome. And then we're in LA, so we started to realize, there's like celebrities that are gonna be at the show. And most celebrities are walking by are no one like that special. The bass player, No Doubt, was there. Tommy Lee, the drummer from Motley Crue, his son was there. Not that I cared about meeting him. Eddie Money, for some of you like old school rock guys, Eddie Money was there. And then I heard that Dave Grohl was there. And so I always wanted to meet him. So I was like, my only job at that point was to find him and meet him, have a conversation, become best friends, and hopefully he'll come to my kid's wedding. That was my only job. So we hear where he is, he's backstage left, so we go backstage left, and right when we get there, he walks by. But it's like so fast, I wasn't prepared, and I was like, oh, hi, and he walked by, and that was it. I didn't get to meet him, I wanted to actually meet him. And so we hear he goes back into the crowd, and then, so I decided, all right, I'm gonna stay here the rest of the show until he leaves. And when he leaves, I'm gonna try to talk to him. So he starts to leave, the show's over, he's leaving, but he's in a group of like 10 other people, and he's in the middle. So I'm not gonna be able to like get into that group and talk. So I just took my phone out and I was going to take a picture of him, you know, like a creep. And I was just like this, acting like I was texting, trying to get a picture. But then he leaves his group and walks to the bathroom. And I just came from the bathroom and knew nobody was in that bathroom. So what did I do? I followed him to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, you know, like a creep, and I walk, and he's at the urinal, and I'm 2 urinals next to him, so I'm not gonna stay right next to him. Come on, guys, you're crazy. And I don't talk to him because I thought that would have been a little too weird for me to like talk to him while he's peeing. I didn't have to go. I pretended like I already came to the bathroom. And so when I'm done, I go to wash my hands, and I'm praying that he's gonna wash his hands. Like, God, please make sure he washes him. And sure enough, he's done, and he goes to wash his hands. And here's what I said to him, and I'm going to quote myself, and I'm embarrassed about what I said, but I said, "Hey Dave, it's me, Eric. Nice to meet you." It's me, Eric, what are we talking about? And he's like, hey, and you know when you talk to somebody and you know like that they're being polite and they don't actually want to talk to you? That was not the case for Dave Grohl. He was like wanting to talk to me. He went and got a paper towel and came all the way back and dried his hands, like talking to me. We talked for 5 good minutes, and then I was like, Dave, is there any way, because we're first name basis at this point, Dave, my wife will never believe, because she's a big Foo Fighters fan too, she'll never believe that I met you. Is there any way I can get a picture with you? I said, of course. So I got a selfie, and here it is. Here's my selfie with Dave Grohl, backstage Metallica. I promise you he was more excited than he looks in that picture, but music has a way of doing that, where you will find songs or bands that just connect with you. Now when we think of the word worship, when we think of that word worship, we normally think of music, worship music. We normally think what we just did. The 3 songs in front, that's our worship time. That's how we worship. And then we do the sermon, and then we go. That's normally we think of worship. And I understand why we do that. Because there are some songs that I know for me, when I hear it, I can feel the presence of God even more. You guys just know what I'm, like maybe Oceans, when we started playing Oceans, that was a song for you that you were like, you just feel like goosebumps. Because music has a way of connecting to your soul. It really does, your emotions and your soul. But music is not what worship is. If we make the idea of worship only when we do the singing part, only songs, then we are diminishing and misunderstanding what the word worship actually means. So here's what worship means, a simple definition for you guys. Worship is simply how we show reverence or adoration to something. It's how we show reverence or adoration to something. It's how we respond to something that we are worship, that we care about. It's your response. Is music worship? Yes. But our worship is not limited to our singing. In fact, every aspect of our lives can be worship. See, we are all designed as people who long to worship something. All of us are designed that way. We long to worship something. All of us have this deep craving in us that wants to worship something, that wants to give our attention and our adoration to something. And all of us are constantly doing it all day. All of us are constantly worshiping. The problem comes is what we are worshiping. We're constantly worshiping, but what are we actually worshiping? See, there's a lot of different idols that the Bible talks about. In fact, in the story of Moses and the Israelites, after after the Israelites are freed from Pharaoh in Egypt, they are wandering the desert 40 years, and they have seen God do some miraculous things. If you ever saw the movie or read the story of Moses, frogs and rain and all this stuff happened that God did to free the Israelites. And the Israelites are wandering the desert now for 40 years. And then I was reading this week, and I was thinking it's like crazy they did this. But at one point, Moses goes up to the mountain to talk to God, to give the 10 Commandments. And while he's gone, who knows how long he's gone, a day or two, these people that were just freed by this God that did these miraculous things decide, we need something to worship. Like, we're not worshiping anything. So they took all the gold they had and melted it and made a calf. They made it. And they started worshiping this calf that they made. I always thought, why would they worship that? But we worship idols just as bad all the time. Some of us, our idols are money. Some of us, our idol is approval, is comfort. Some of us, our idol is finding a spouse. That's our idol. Some of it's physical pleasure, power, freedom. John Calvin says the human heart is a factory of idols. We are always looking for these different idols for us to worship just like they did. Because we desperately crave to worship something, it is easy for us to fall into the trap of making disciples, or of making idols, and following idols. Even though there's a list of idols that we have, we really only worship 2 things. There's many idols that we can have: money, power, freedom, whatever. But we only actually worship two things. The two things we worship is this: we either worship God or we worship ourselves. That's our options. We worship God or we worship ourselves. If money is your idol, it's because of the way that money makes you feel, the power that you get from it, the ability to buy things to just satisfy something in you. So really that idol of money is there so that you can worship yourself, because it makes you feel better. If finding a spouse is your idol, it's because you want the security and comfort that it provides you. That's your idol that you're worshiping yourself with. The idols aren't what we worship. They reflect what we're actually worshiping: ourselves. And these idols make what you actually worship, which is yourself, feel better, but only temporarily. You never get to a point where you have enough money, where you're fully satisfied. Okay, I'm at the point now I don't need any more of this money because I am fully satisfied now with this money. It will make you happy for a while, but only temporarily. It will satisfy you, but only temporarily. You ever buy something and you're so happy and satisfied with it, and then eventually you're not as happy anymore? I'm a 90s kid, like I said. So there was a game system that I wanted so bad in the 90s that my parents are awesome, so they got it for me. And it's a Nintendo 64. If you don't know what it is, that's what it looks like, Nintendo 64. Mario Kart, Mario 64, Zelda, GoldenEye, the list can go on. And I remember getting this game, and I would spend hours in my room playing all day, all night. I just play. I loved it. I still own that. I haven't played Nintendo 64 in years. You know why? Not satisfying me anymore. Eventually, I needed to get an Xbox, because that was kind of out of date. Then I needed an Xbox 360, then I needed an Xbox One, then I needed a Nintendo Switch. So we have these idols that we have, and we think, oh, it's finally going to satisfy us, but then eventually we're not satisfied. It might satisfy us temporarily, but it doesn't satisfy us for a while. See, what we are satisfied in is what we worship. So many of us, we settle for a temporary, immediate satisfaction when we can really have ultimate satisfaction. We don't have to live that way. We don't have to worship ourselves and focus on these idols that will never satisfy us. No. What should we do? We should do this. We should worship what's worth worshiping. That's what we should do. We should worship what is worth worshiping. Today we're going to be talking from Romans chapter 12. And we heard a little bit of it during the worship part, but give you a little background on Romans chapter 12. Romans is written by a guy named Paul. And Paul used to go by another name. He used to go by Saul. And Paul is one of my favorite people to read about the Bible, because he was a guy that used to persecute Christians and try to do any kind of snuff out this movement called the Way, is what it was called. He would do whatever it took, whether it meant finding people and arresting them, whether it meant killing people, whatever it took, he was going to stop this movement that Jesus started called the Way, until the living Jesus came on the road to Damascus and revealed himself to Saul, changed his identity from Saul to Paul, and then Paul became the biggest persecutor of Christianity to the biggest church planter ever. And he eventually dies. What most scholars believe is that he was beheaded for his faith. He went from a person who said, I'll do whatever it takes to stop this, to then going, you know what, Jesus really did come, die, and come back to life, and if that happened, I'm following that. And he started planting more and more churches. And most of the New Testament are letters written by Paul to these churches, and this is an example of that. In Romans, Paul is writing to the church in Rome. In chapters 1 through 11, Paul talks a lot about ways to live as a follower of Jesus in view of God's grace. And then he says this in Romans 12, verse 1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Let's break this down a little bit. Therefore, it starts with therefore. That means that's indicating to, because of all the stuff I've already written, everything from chapter 1 through 11, because of all this stuff I've written, and in chapter 1 through 11, it talks a lot about how faithful God is, how righteousness is not found in us, but only through God, and how we find true hope in Him. He talks all about God's grace and His mercy that we have through Jesus, chapters 1 through 11. Therefore, because of all of that, because of God's mercies, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Paul uses this word offer a lot in Romans. I think it's like 6 times. And every time he's talking about, it's a verb that he uses to express the basic response to God's grace. Offer yourself as a living sacrifice. See, in the Old Testament, in the Old Law, the Old Covenant, when you did something wrong, you had to take an animal, a holy, perfect, unblemished animal, and sacrifice it to God. And that sacrifice would pay for your sin. Because when we sin, when we do something wrong, the penalty of sin is death. Something has to die. So back in the old covenant, they would sacrifice an animal. That would be the way that they get right standing with God. Well, when Jesus comes, he's the ultimate sacrifice for us. He takes your sin and my sin and your punishment and my punishment, takes it up on a cross so that we don't have to do that ourselves. To be that ultimate sacrifice. And all we have to do is turn to God, accept that grace, believe in Him, and follow Him. So now, what do we offer up? We offer up what we have. That's ourselves, as a living sacrifice. When we do this, Paul says, it's worship. We give ourselves to God as His sacrifice when we understand His grace in place of our lives. We offer ourselves not ignorantly like animals being brought to the slaughter like they were in the Old Covenant, but intelligently and willingly. And when we do this, this is the worship that Paul says pleases God. That is how we're supposed to worship. See, worship is not simply the 3 songs we sing before I preach. Worship is simply an overflow of what Christ did for you on the cross. That's what it is. It's the way we respond to the grace that you believe. That's worship. When we understand what Christ did for us on the cross, worship is just what happens next. That's the next thing that happens. We come to a worship service because God first served us. Our entire lives should be worship, not just here. I mean, I love Sunday mornings, and I love the songs beforehand, and in church world, there are different opinions and thoughts on what to do when it comes to the worship part, when it comes to kids. There are some churches that there is no kids environment. They all come here into the service. And there are some churches that instead of doing that, they have something for them, but it's more like babysitting. We believe that we want kids to learn about God on their level and not come to church and think God's boring and irrelevant to them, but actually go in there and learn that God loves them at their level, which is why we encourage those environments. But there's other churches that instead of doing all that, they actually have the kids in here during the worship part. And then they go to the service afterwards. They go to their service afterwards. We don't do that. We have them in there the whole time. And I'm not against it. I don't think it's wrong to do it that way. But here's what worries me when we do it that way. And I've heard people tell me that I want my kid to be in there to hear me worship, to see me worship, and do that. And here's my warning for you. If your kid comes because you want them to see worship in service, but that's the only time they see worship throughout the whole week, they're not going to think you're holy. They're going to think you're a hypocrite. So be careful. Be careful what you want. See, worship is not simply that part. Everything we do in our lives is supposed to be worship. Sometimes we're worshiping God. Sometimes we're worshiping ourselves. But when we understand the grace that we are given through Jesus' sacrifice, when we truly understand that, the result will be worship. So when you understand that, it changes your life. And the way you live throughout the whole week, when you respond to that grace, what you do next is simply worship. If you're at work and you forgive somebody at work or at school because you understand I've been forgiven, even though I didn't deserve it, God forgave me, who am I not to forgive somebody else? So I'm going to forgive them even though they're not even asking for it. When you do that, guess what you're doing? You're worshiping. That's worship. When you care for and serve people who are down and out, you see someone that needs a helping hand, you give them that hand, because you understand that when you were down and out, God came to you, that God came to this earth to save you. You say, if God did that for me, then that's the only way I can respond. And you help other people, and you care for other people, guess what you're doing? You're worshiping. That is worship. When you look at the way Jesus commanded us to live, not as a list of rules, that like, why does Jesus not want us to have any fun? But we look at that list and go, well, if he died and came back to life, and he modeled this radical love that changed the world, then I'm going to do what he says because I want my heart to be like his. When we start to live those things out and we sacrifice things that we want because we feel like God is calling us to do that, then what we're doing is we're worshiping. That's worship. When you are more generous with what you have, with your time, with your money, when you're more generous with it because you understand that you're not in control of it. That, yeah, you worked hard, I get it, and you need to work hard, but who gave you the ability to work? Who gave you the opportunities you have? So you take that, what you've been given, the blessings you've been given in life, and you're generous with it. When you do that, you're worshiping. That is worship. We need to worship what's worth worshiping. And God, the one who saved us, He is worth worshiping. When we live a lifestyle of worship, in that we will find the satisfaction that all of us are craving, the true satisfaction. We don't worship to receive satisfaction, we worship because we are satisfied. We do not worship to save ourselves, we worship because He has already saved us. Worship what's worth worshiping. I talked about this in our family service for those that were here at 9:15. But as a new head pastor, because I'm learning how long we've been in church? 4 weeks. It seems like a year already, but it's 4 weeks. Being in the role that I'm in, I get worried about the fact that I come up here and I'm talking to you guys, and I don't want you guys to ever fall into a trap because I led you that way. That's like a burden that's heavy on my heart. And when I was reading and preparing for today, this verse came out in Isaiah that kind of scared me, and it might scare some of you. Here's what it says, Isaiah 29, verse 13. These people come near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is based on merely human rules they have been taught. This verse scares me. It really does. I mean, there are times where I come to church, and even this morning we had some things that weren't working, and I'm trying to get into a heart of worship myself, but as a pastor, this is like my busiest work day. And I'm thinking, why isn't this TV working? Why is this not that way? Why are things? And it's hard for me sometimes where I come up here and I speak and I sing, but in my head I'm just thinking about something else. And I always look and go, oh, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship for me is based merely on human rules that they have been taught. I worry, and some of us are playing the worshiping God part, but really we're worshiping ourselves. That worries me. And this should worry you. So I try to think of some ways that we use the worshiping God part to actually worship ourselves. Let me give you 4 ways really quickly. When we worship ourselves, here's some of the ways that we do that. We decide what God is like and what He should do. We take this creator, holy, perfect God of the universe, and we morph Him into what we like, what we think He should care about. And normally when we do that, what we do is we say, these sins over there that we don't struggle with, that's what God really cares about. And the sins we actually struggle with, we go, well, God doesn't care that much about that. God has grace for that. So we take this holy, perfect God and we make Him into our image. We're supposed to make it into His image. When we worship ourselves, a lot of times we decide what God should look like, or what He should do. When we worship ourselves, we refuse to submit to any authority except the ones we choose to obey. I'm not submitting to anybody. Like some of you hate having bosses, right? And you're like, I'm not submitting to a boss. I have a spouse, I'm not submitting to my spouse. Are you kidding me? I'm not submitting to any authority, whether it's my spouse, my boss, my government, or my creator. I'm not doing it. Unless I choose to do it. You know why? Because you're not actually worshiping God. You're worshiping yourself. When we worship ourselves, everything we do, even in church, is for you. It's for you. There are songs that if you've been in church for a long time, you'll have a list, but there are songs that as the pastor, I hate worship songs. And I'll give you a couple, I'll give it to you. I Am Free, you guys know that song? Let me test it. I am free to run. Just so you guys know it. So there's no one to do it. I hate that song. And here's why. I'll tell you why I hate it. Because when I was as a youth pastor, for a long time, and I would go to camps and we do that part, I am free to run. All these kids would start running around the whole thing and they all start dancing. I just thought it was really corny. I hate any songs that tell me to do something. That's my rebellion side. So I don't like that. Here's another one I don't like. Like a Lion. You guys like that one? You ever heard that one? So the chorus goes, if you don't know it, says, it's living on the inside, roaring like a lion. Here's why I don't like it. I'm going to ruin it for all of you. You ready? So if you like the song, you might want to come yours. First time I heard that song, I thought, oh, that's a kind of clever song. And then my brother was like, yeah, but I just hear living on the inside, roaring like a lion. So now anytime I hear that song, all I think of my brother going, roaring like a lion. So I can't worship. But here's what I do. I'll sit here, or I'll go somewhere else, and if there's a song that comes up that I don't like, that's my excuse to not worship for that song. Because if you don't like the song, what do? You just go, well, now listen, I'm not going to sing the song. This song's dumb. When really, we're here entering into a time of worship where we're like consciously setting this time aside to sing songs, but we're not going to worship. I guess I do that too. See, I know people that they go from church to church to church trying to find something that a church that they like that best fits them. They'll find something they don't like eventually, and they'll eventually leave. Now, there are things when you go to a church and you hear it, and there are things that you should maybe leave because of it. But if you're constantly going from church to church to church looking for that, then most likely it's because you've made the church service about you. I get that. And eventually you might find the perfect church for you, but you'll be the one that goes to it because it's all about you. If we make worship, if we make everything we do here about us, we're not worshiping God. It's about our personal preferences. I get it. You want to go to church where you feel comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that. But eventually, I promise you, if you stay here long enough, I'm going to do something to hurt your feelings. I promise you. I'm not perfect. If every time something happens, you go to another church, you start looking at what you're actually worshiping. When we worship ourselves, last one, everything you do, if you worship yourselves, you aren't willing to surrender or sacrifice anything. Surrender, sacrifice. Not doing that. See, on Sunday mornings, we have a team that gets here at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. And there's some people that said they want to help with worship, but I don't want to get there super early. I mean, I only have 2 days on my weekend. I only have 2 days to sleep in, so I'm not sacrificing that. We talk about giving and how we believe that God calls us to be generous people and that we should give a priority percentage back to God, and the way we do that is through our tithes and offerings. Well, I can give something, but a percentage every time? Not willing to do that. You know why? Worship yourself. Worship yourself. We should worship what is worthy of worshiping. I believe that living a lifestyle of worship to the God who deserves our worship is not only the most satisfying way to live, but I also believe it will solve most of your problems. If you struggle with being ungrateful, it's because you have a small view of God. If you get mad at God when things turn out the way you intended, it's because you morphed God into a self-serving vending machine that's there to serve you, not the God who created the universe who we are made to worship. If you have trouble connecting to God, I believe it's because we've forgotten what He's done for us. When we truly understand that grace, that the God of the universe loved you so much, He sent His Son for you to pay the ultimate price for you, and you don't have to do anything to earn it. All you have to do is accept it. The automatic response to that is worship. When we truly understand it, it's worship. Worshiping our Creator shouldn't just happen here. You shouldn't come on a Sunday morning and be like, hey, got my worship done for the week, I'm good to go. It shouldn't just happen here. There's a world out there that needs to know the hope found in Jesus. That they're trying to satisfy themselves with their idols of money and everything else that we struggle with sometimes. They need to know. Our worship should not stop here. Should not stop here. We need to allow Sundays to be a breath of fresh air for us. We need to allow Sundays to be a way to convict us where God wants to convict you. We need to allow Sundays to be a way to remind you that there is a world out there that desperately needs grace that we are talking about. We need to allow it to be a way to worship the God who deserves our worship. But it can't stop here. It can't. We have to live it out past this. So here's one thing I know. If you come on a Sunday morning, and Sunday morning is the only time you worship, you're not worshiping on Sunday. It's about you. You're not even worshiping on Sunday. Let me give you an analogy. If there's a husband, and 6 days of the week he goes out and is unfaithful to his wife, but one day of the week he comes home for a free meal, is he a faithful husband? No. We can't let our worship stay here. It can't just be on a Sunday morning. There's a world out there that's dying because of sin. We need to help them. We need to show them the true life, the true hope. We can't let it stay here. Now I understand you're going to mess up. I do. There's times where I start to worship myself. I start to care too much about other things, and I fall into that trap of worshiping myself. We all do that. But here's what's great. When you understand that and see that, and go, oh no, I'm worshiping myself. And you turn back to God and you go, God, I'm sorry, I want to come back to you. Guess what you're doing? Worshiping. That's worship. That is worship. Worship is our response to what we revere most. You are designed to worship. So we should worship what's worth worshiping. So today, as we close, I want to do something we haven't done yet. I want to do communion, take communion, so we can have our host team start preparing for that. And let me just talk to you about communion and what we believe here at Impact Church. Impact Church, you do not need to be a regular attender or an owner here at Impact Church to partake in communion. All you need to be is someone that says, I follow Jesus, I believe in that grace that Jesus gave me. That's it. You be a member of the kingdom. We also believe that this is an opportunity for you to make that step. If you've never done that, you say, I want this grace that we're talking about. This is an opportunity for you to do that. So what we're going to do is, we're going to have the ushers, you guys can come forward actually. We're going to have the bread in the middle and 2 cups of juice on the side. And when you come up, we just want to ask you, take the bread, and I'm going to read to you Matthew before we start. Take the bread, dip it into the juice, and partake it, and take a seat. When you sit back down, I want you just to think about some of the things that we've been talking about. Some things that maybe God's convicted you on worship. If you're here and you don't know if you want to do this, don't feel comfortable, do not feel obligated to do this, to come on down, but we want to give this opportunity for us to continue our worship, which is what this is, by responding to what God has done. So let me read for you before we start. Matthew chapter 26. While they were eating, Jesus took the bread, gave thanks to it, and broke it, and gave it to his disciples, saying, take and eat. This is my body. Then he took the cup, gave thanks, and offered it to them, saying, drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many of you for the forgiveness of sins. So as you come, I want you to reflect on the grace God has given us through what he did on the cross. Because this is our worship, responding to that grace. So this time, you guys can come and partake in